Topping today's news, Prime Minister Philip Davis, in full support of comments made by the Minister of Immigration in regards to illegal migrants, the National Security Minister reacts to the killing of a Defense Force Marine. The Culture Minister responding to complaints over the Junkanoo scoring system, and the Carifta Games gets another major partner. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jcn This is your Jcn Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. On Wednesday, during a communication in the House of Assembly, Immigration Minister Keith Bell warned migrants living and working in the Bahamas illegally to wind up their affairs and leave the country voluntarily or face deportation with no legal means to return. Prime Minister Philip Davis today standing behind the Immigration Minister, telling reporters that the law is the law.
I think it's just reiterating what the law is, and we think that all who are here ought to be able to comply with our laws, and we are a country of laws, and we ask those who abide with us or who are here, obey the laws.
When asked if the government will actively address the illegal migration issue in the country, the Prime Minister asserts it is already being addressed.
We are addressing it. We are addressing it. We are addressing the issues that impact. This is not a new issue. In fact, this is an issue that's been with us from pre-emancipation. If you check your historical facts, you'll note that the issue of migration in the Bahamas is related to our neighbors to the north and throughout the Caribbean has been with us from pre-emancipation.
Minister Bell, in his warning, says the failure of illegal migrants to wind up their affairs and leave will result in their arrest, prosecution, deportation, and placement on a restricted list, which will completely bar you from any future entry into the country for any reason. In wake of the killing of the 30-year-old Bahamas Defense Force officer, Alvarez McCoy, who was killed outside his home shortly before 2 a.m. on Wednesday on Ambrister Street, Fox Hill, Minister of National Security Wayne Munro says crime affects everyone. When asked about crime in the country beginning to affect the very people that are meant to fight against it, the National Security Minister says not even law enforcement, politicians, or religious leaders are spared from the effects of crime, and that is why it is everyone's concern.
I'm concerned anytime anyone is murdered. I will be reaching out to the family of the Marine seaman who was a part of the Harbor Patrol unit. We will try to get to the bottom of it. Crime must be stopped. It can only be stopped if all of us participate. The person who did that killing is somebody's son. Somebody has him in their house. We're appealing to you, stop harboring murderers. Expose them, turn them over to the police, because if you do not, it's only a matter of time before the police will get them. And we see the phenomenon on our streets of retribution, and you do not know if you harbor a murderer that will bring consequences to you. We again, together with the Commissioner of Police, appeal to the public to assist the police, appeal to the public to stop offering succor and comfort to criminals.
According to reports, McCoy was discovered by neighbors with gunshot injuries about the body and damage to his burgundy Nissan Cube. He was a father of 3 and his mother's only child, reportedly, as police continue to investigate this matter. Now, when asked on whether there are plans to address what some Bahamians feel is growing criminality on the family islands, Minister Munro says, or he reminded that criminals are raised among us.
They don't appear out of thin air. There are signs when they are coming up. The very troubling is they arrested a 15-year-old boy with a Draco, which is an assault weapon. So when the public sees these things, when you see young boys going off track, you have a choice. You have a choice to make it your business to become involved, or you have a choice to do absolutely nothing about it. And the choice you take, the decision you make, will impact that young person at risk. And it's very important that all of us understand and accept that we have a part to play in the fight. We are not spectators. It's not for us to sit back and watch the police do it.
Minister Monroe says we need to do a better job of raising our children or we will continue to see growing criminality among youth. The National Security Minister again appeals to Bahamians to become more active participants in the lives of young people. Donya Walker, 31 years old, the mother of the late 4-year-old Donya Bella Walker, is currently awaiting sentencing after the judge found her guilty of cruelty and allowing her boyfriend to beat her 4-year-old to death. Baby Bella was killed in November 2021, just 2 months after she moved from Grand Bahama, where she stayed with her father's family members, and she came to the capital to stay with her mother. Jcn News, we asked Minister of National Security Wayne Monroe about reports that the accused Walker is once again pregnant, and how does the justice system handle circumstances when an accused is pregnant and being held in custody. Minister Monroe responded with the following statement as it relates to law.
Well, the courts apply the law and apply sentences that are appropriate. The reality is that if the court determines to award a term of confinement and imprisonment, provisions will have to be made for any child that is born. So we would be able to, the inmate being there, having the child would not be a major issue. The issue would be what happens to the child after birth, and that will be a matter for who has custody, care, and control while the mother serves whatever sentence is imposed upon her.
So she's allowed to give birth first before she goes to prison, or?
Well, the courts will determine what sentence to impose. If they impose a sentence from the date that they impose it and it begins to be served, then if the birth takes place while the accused, the inmate, is in prison, that will be facilitated.
Walker's boyfriend, Darion Smith, 34 years old, was found guilty and sentenced to 25 years in prison for the murder of baby Bella. She returns to court. Her mother returns to court on March 1st for the sentencing hearing. Until then, she is being held at the Bahamas Department of Correctional Services. Meanwhile, Mr. Monroe went on to explain that even in instances where the death penalty applies to a pregnant inmate, protocol dictates that an execution for that inmate may only happen once she has given birth. Following the Bahamas Nurses Union's president, Amancia Williams, raising concerns about overcrowding in the Accident and Emergency Department of the Princess Margaret Hospital, Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Michael Dowell says this is something that hospital officials anticipated, and that is due to ongoing renovations at PMH. Renovations have contributed to the lack of beds, and Dr. Dowell is appealing to members of the public for your patience.
Well, there's no question. There is a situation at the accident emergency that has been going on for some time. We got all of the signs months ago that we were going to have challenges, particularly coming into the winter months, and people influx to the accident emergency. Yesterday, we had a backlog. The situation is presently under control. As you are aware, we're doing massive renovations at Princess Margaret Hospital, female surgical 1, male medical 2, the basement of the legacy unit, and the list goes on and on. This has created some additional shortage of bed space. We went into the contractual agreement with Doctors Hospital. There's a bottleneck. That has been worked out. And so from time to time, when the admissions rate at the accident emergency goes up, we will have challenges. But we assure the Bahamian people that the contractual agreement that we went into for repairs is somewhere between 14 to 18 months, and we ask the general population to please bear with us.
Dr. Dowell says the backlog on Monday was quite severe. However, through the partnership with Doctors Hospital West, the situation was mitigated. Minister Dowell says until renovations are completed on both the male medical number 1 and female surgical number 2, they will continue to utilize Doctors Hospital West. Meantime, there have been complaints of similar concerns on Grand Bahama at the Rand Memorial Hospital. The health minister says that those matters at the Rand are currently being addressed.
There is preparation, land preparation for the foundation for our modular units that will act as the interim to address the backlog that is presently at the accident emergency at the Rand Memorial Hospital. Those modular units are on the ground in Grand Bahama, and once the foundation is done, they're just basically to be connected, They are fully functional, and that will debundle the situation at the accident emergency at the Rand Memorial Hospital. The new hospital that we promised for the residents of Grand Bahama is going extremely well. The finalization of the plot plan is near completion. As you are aware, we had to acquire additional land. That pushed us back a few months. But all of our teams, all the steering committees, our architects and engineers are working very diligently for us to get the final approvals from the Rand Memorial, final approvals from the Grand Bahama Port Authority, so that we can finalize the request for proposal and we can get shovel in the ground as soon as possible.
The green light has been given to begin the construction of the modular facilities at the Rand Memorial. However, no specific date has been given for its completion. The health minister says contractors are on the ground and the facility should be completed within the first quarter of this year. And finally, in this segment, when members of the House of Assembly met for a brief session on Wednesday during communications, leaders of the official opposition, Michael Pintard, while speaking on the issue of celebrating majority rule, made the following debatable and provocative suggestion regarding the economic and social aspects of majority rule.
The reality is that in the modern Bahamas, persons often question to what extent does the majority actually influence the rule in this country. This question, Madam Speaker, is rooted in the day-to-day experience of ordinary Bahamians. There are still some and new old oligarchies whose backs are not yet broken. Instead, some of these white and black groups continue to carve out significant portions of our patrimony for themselves to the detriment of new entrepreneurs. When Bahamians look around the modern Bahamas, it is sometimes difficult to see how it could be true that the majority of our citizens are determining our course and benefiting from our wealth.
Mr. Pintard then focused on the unemployment rate, earning power, and opportunities.
Unemployment last year sat at more than 13.2%, up from 2017, when it was just under 10%. The gross national income per capita in the Bahamas from 2011 to 2021 have remained more or less stagnant around $28,000 per year. Far too often, if we meet more often, we could talk about a lot more issues. Far too often, many Bahamians seek access to agriculture and agriculture land, crown land for entrepreneurial pursuits, and are rebuffed or stalled, while the wealthy or immigrants and some lawless Bahamians occupy land illegally with too little consequences.
Members return to the House of Assembly on February 1st. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.